got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf degenerates and fans. My name is Joe Idoni at Tour Picks, where you can find me on X, and you've stumbled your way into the Preferred Lines podcast, your weekly golf gambling club meeting. We are here tonight to discuss all things, put a bow on the Charles Schwab Challenge, move forward to Jack's Place. We're here to talk Muirfield Village, get the lowdown on the course from my guy, John. And then we're going to talk betting picks to win for the 2025 Memorial Golf Tournament. Super excited. Love this event. The very first professional golf event that I saw in person. Me and my boys in high school hopped in a freaking Intrepid. I think it was Intrepid, my buddy's car. We rolled like 5 deep in that thing all the way down to Columbus, 3 hours. 85 the whole way, like maniacs, and enjoyed ourselves. Had a great time. Let's have a great time tonight. Appreciate you for checking out the show. Make sure to like and subscribe over on the Preferred Lines YouTube channel. We genuinely appreciate your support. When I say we, I mean myself and that guy right there. You're welcome in, your co-host, John Hazelbauer. John, good evening. Happy Memorial Day. It's great to see you tonight, man.
Yes, sir. It's a little memorial chat on Memorial Day. What could be better? That's an awesome story. I didn't know that. This is like a little sentimental first tournament for you. On TV, it looks like the best visual experience of a golf course of any like regular PGA Tour venue. Would you agree with that?
The thing is, I agree with you on TV. I had no baseline level of appreciation during this period of time in high school of professional golf. We just went to see Tiger. Like Jim Furyk was in contention. I remember Phil being there. But the main thing that I remember is the drive down there was fun. We got there. It was like 2.5 hours, and we're kind of on the back end of the course. And there was alarms went off, rain delay, all the players went inside. We're like stuck. There's really nowhere to go. So one of the houses on the course seemed to be having some sort of house party. And we were like 16, 17 years old at the time. And instead of walking back toward the clubhouse, we made our way and sort of crashed a house party. We got some food, maybe a beverage or two. That's here nor there. But we had ourselves a good time. Sooner or later, we're running the tables downstairs. We're playing pool. We're like members of the family. They loved us. We stumbled our way back out to the course, finished a great day. I don't even remember who won that year, but that was my first experience in professional golf, and it was a good one. So always excited when they roll back to Ohio.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, we just talked last week about how the Northeast is kind of golf starved, and this is one of the closer ones to the Northeast when we talk about like guys who play well in the Northeast. This sort of counts. This sort of fits in that bucket. It's a little bit different. It's technically Midwest, but like I like being up north. I think we've gotten our fix of Florida and Texas and California, and it's nice to see a little different style of golf.
Beautiful green, always on TV at the Muirfield Village Golf Club. Before we do that, got to mention, before we get too far into this show, as always, proudly presented by the good people over at Rotoballer. The promo code, if you want to catch any of my articles this week covering the Memorial, the Market Movers piece, I feel like is one of the best pieces of works that I do. It's on the premium side, but you can use that promo code LINES to get 10% off any subscription over there at Rotoballer. I already have the top 10 power rankings piece out now. That's free. Just go check my Twitter page. You can get that. John, I know you've already published the Everything You Need to Know About Muirfield Village article. So you're talking to a couple of guys on Monday night on a holiday. Yes, I have a king here with me. Memorial Day is like one of my favorite days, dude. It's sort of under the radar for a couple of reasons. One, national championship lacrosse is always Memorial Day. Big lacrosse guy, played in college. I'm a diehard fan. My boy's into it now. I'm coaching. It always falls during the day. Today, we had ourselves a great game this afternoon. And anytime you're dealing with memorializing or remembering, people who have defended this country in honor, who have fallen. And I have a very close friend that I played lacrosse with growing up, who this is a tough day. Always, we always think about him. Shout out Adam Hamilton. I was still thinking about you today, buddy. Like 14 years later. So it's just a special day that I really got to enjoy with family. So excited to be here with you now, John. Let's do a little bit of a recap of last week's Charles Schwab. But before I do that, we kind of got this caught off guard with this last week a little bit. We got the news mid-show in the chat that big guy James Degen had passed away and sort of lost his battle with cancer. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it from a distance, and someone who's been on this show as a guest and communicated with him multiple times. I have texts with him. I just had a ton of respect and admiration with how he handled the whole process from the diagnosis. He didn't go into hiding. He really embraced the fight of it. He publicized his fight with it, often showing pictures of him going through treatment. It really kind of brought us along with that journey. And what was most encouraging was it felt like that last bit of time that he spent really living his life to the fullest, checking things off the bucket list. I was talking last week with my guy, Scott Blumstein, and Scott brought him to the World Series of Poker, kind of showed him around. They took pictures together. He entered that tournament. So I really just want to celebrate him more than make this sad. And truly like a one-of-a-kind personality and entertainer, and had all the charisma you could ever ask for in a person who's hosting golf content. And from you, I'm sure, John, for myself, for all the people that watch this show, he will be dearly missed. And we were lucky to know the big guy.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's very well put. And his influence, I think, is like very larger than life guy who, beyond just like this golf circle where he's been in, you can see that people across the fantasy industry as a whole, and just like the sphere of influence that you see of people who are touched by him is very expansive. So I'm sure there's going to be efforts throughout the community, to celebrate him and all of that going forward. But obviously a tough blow for the community. And you're right, we kind of caught that one live on the show last week. So very, very well put.
Okay, Charles Schwab Challenge. Ben Griffey, baby. He gets it done. He gets across the finish line. Now he has got 1.5 wins on the PGA Tour season, but kind of culminated in a lot of laying the groundwork for a couple of years now. And really, that coming to a fruition in a way in New Orleans, but it never quite feels the same. I'm sure even Andrew Novak would admit that, is busting down the doors on your own. There's a moment there on the back nine where you needed to come up clutch, and you did, and that sort of ingrains a memory within your swing that I have the ability to do this. And it was fun to see him kind of break through. And of course, the boogeyman was kind of making his run during the weekend. But shout out Ben Griffin. Any words or anything to add on kind of putting a bow on Charles Schwab?
Yeah, was never really on my radar last week. I don't know about you, but I mean, maybe it was the course history. Maybe I read too much into the course history, but he just had a top 10 finish at the PGA Championship the week before that, plays the shorter course as well. To me, more of a birdie fest, guys, is where I kind of bucket him. And when I see the conditions bite back a little bit, I'm like, okay, I don't really know that that's your game. But you really look at Ben Griffin's game, and he's been getting better and better and better at just short game as a whole. Scrambling, putting is a strength, and like short irons really, really good. And it's the driver that's kind of held him back, I think, or it's like he doesn't really have the distance or accuracy. But something came over him this week because he was bombing it like 300 plus every hole down the stretch. So good for him. I'll give an early credit check to him, because like he kind of transcended this like bucket that I had him in, which is like the birdie fest guy, but he's not going to win like a big one, anytime soon. And he might be for real. I mean, how many more top 10s does he have to string together before he's on Bethpage watch?
It's getting there. Got to continue to roll. I don't want to, we almost put Andrew Novak on the team a couple of weeks ago, so I don't want to put it on there too early, but needs to make a couple more moves, I think, to solidify himself if he wants to be, because I don't know that I love the course fit for Benny Griff. But I will say, they give away really cool, like restored cars every year to the winner. The Land Rover Defender that they gave Ben Griffin was the best yet in my. I'm not an old school 2-seater muscle car guy like they've done with the Stingrays and the Corvettes. That defender was freaking sick, dude. Him and his wife sitting in there. He really leveled up when he's going to be riding around Jupiter in that thing here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I don't really get the Charles Schwab connection with the car giveaway. Like, why is it not just like the Chevy? Like, they're just getting like free publicity out of it, I guess, without being paying to be a sponsor. But it is one of the cooler traditions in the game. I did see that. Yeah,
for sure. Joanne, thanks for giving us the news last week. I didn't mean to call you out or anything, but we just weren't sure, so it's hard to mention it live. Jack wants to know if it's more Cows Week. Jack, you're gonna have to stick around a little bit and listen to a little bit more of our bull crap and ranting, because I have no idea, John. We got to get this off the chest. Everyone's here this week. This is Jack's tournament. Scotty's here off like 4 weeks in a row. Rory McIlroy is not in the field this week. This is weird, right? Like, you put in your piece, I really loved it, that maybe he's doing some soul searching. I don't know if it's more than that, but we got the big story at the Masters about how Rory sat down with Jack and figured out a plan to take down Augusta National, and Jack gave him these key little tidbits of advice that was able to get him over the hump. And then he skips his tournament a couple weeks later. I don't know. He's been in this thing every year since 2018. This is really strange to me that skips all the media at the PGA and then does not elect to play this week. What do you think's going on?
Yeah, I didn't realize how much of a mainstay he was at this event, but you're right. It's been every year since 2018. He's been here and played well, hasn't won, but a bunch of top 10s here. Of course, it obviously suits him well. And the Jack connection, I think maybe the PGA Tour has gotten a little bit too far with the scheduling and like keeping everybody's interest in and around the majors with these signature events. And it's just like an unsustainable schedule to expect every single top player to play like 4 straight weeks. With Scotty, it's like really tough too, because it's all Texas events, major signature events, and then the next major. So like, he's not going to skip the Texas events. I forget where he's probably not going to go to Canada. Makes sense, but he's got like a really ambitious stretch right now.
He has to go to Canada, I think.
Rory loves going to Canada. I have to imagine that he chose Canada over this, which is an odd choice.
It gets even weirder if he doesn't go to Canada. Like, something's wrong.
I mean, I very much felt like something was wrong just seeing how he played and acted at Quail Hollow, 2 weeks ago. So something's up. I'm not going to speculate. I don't know what's going on in personal life or swing. I don't know what's going on, but he doesn't seem like himself, which is like the opposite of what I would expect with the weight being lifted off his shoulders after winning the Masters.
Right. So this is signature event number 7 of 8. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Travelers will be
by my quick math. Like, there used to be this thing, like, remember a couple of years ago, like, he was going to get fined because you can only miss one.
Yeah.
I think this is his 3rd of the year. Like, he didn't play Century. Was that signature? I know he didn't play Heritage after the Masters, which made sense. And then he skips this week. So it's very odd. I don't really understand what's going on, but I feel like I don't know. I want to know more. I just really wanted him to get in front of the media this week, who are probably going to be harsh on him, and maybe somewhat deservingly so, because I think a lot of them had their feelings hurt at the PGA Championship, and it didn't make sense. And now to skip that another week and go to Canada, where maybe not everyone is making that travel, maybe that makes him not have to answer as many questions about that. I just don't understand the line of thinking, especially with his connection to Jack and his history at this event. I do know he was very critical of the renovation a few years ago, and came out and didn't like how you couldn't really go for the par 5s. I remember him saying that in one of the press conferences, that he felt like he had to just lay up to 100 yards on the par 5s, and he wasn't a fan of that. But look, it's the Memorial. It's one of the biggest tournaments of the year. He should be here.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it kind of just undermines the whole signature event model if that was sort of like the understanding of everybody on the PGA Tour, like, hey, we have to buy into this. We're going to limit the field so that everybody can see all the best players all at once. That's the whole point of this. And you're right. Like, okay, if you can't go to every single one, you can miss one, but you can't skip all of these. So yeah, I mean, it's too bad for the people who live, near Dublin, Ohio, who are going here to see all the games best and see all the games best except one this week. I mean, it's still a great field. It's a great event. It's not going to change that. We're not going to throw an asterisk on this one, Taylor Gooch style. There's still plenty of ammunition in this field, but yeah, it's odd. And whenever we see Rory and Oppressor again, I'm very curious to see what he's been up to these last few weeks.
Going back to the Sobel thing that we mentioned last week, like his talking to the media about the need for players to be more forward facing with them and become faces of the game. And like his stardom, I feel like peaked like a month and a half ago. And where it was at then to where it's at now, it just feels like such a 180 from what I was expecting. Like he was really going to take this to the next level and become this massive, like superstar SB athlete of the year type stuff, and like continue this run with gas pedal down with what he'd done earlier. He's had a great year. It just doesn't make sense. But moving on from Rory, a couple other news things I wanted to get out there. Will Zalatoris saw that he had undergoing back surgery, herniated disc. I don't know if it was back or neck, but compounding upon the wrist injury that he dealt with. Guy just can't seem to catch a break right now. And we talked about it a few weeks ago with like the SEP thing, and both of you and I were in agreement. Like, okay, Zalatoris is going to get this done.
Yeah,
It's starting to feel like injuries are piling up, like during a portion which should be the peak of a young player, and he's missing a lot of time. And I think he's older than we may think he is, because he had this burst. Like he's 28, Scotty's 28.
yeah,
He's older.
crazy.
He's older than Hovland. He's older than Morikawa. He's older than Ludwig, obviously, who are players that are seemingly lapping him on the track of PGA Tour life. I think he has one top 20 in all of the 2025 starts. I hope he gets right. I hope he gets back. But this is concerning to me, the second injury, after withdrawals from back stuff at the Open Championship a few years ago, that's starting to kind of become a thing for Willie Z.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a factor of like chasing speed. He's always had like so much more distance, like pound for pound distance with that wiry frame, that he just becomes a little bit more susceptible to injury. Maybe. I don't know. It's a tough one. Maybe it's just a string of bad luck. Like injuries aren't that rampant in this game, fortunately, but they seem to kind of linger around a select few guys. I mean, you bring up Tiger too. Jason Day is a guy who's like battled injuries his whole career, had to readjust the swing too. I think like the move to the broomstick was even done just to, not have to bend over as much and not put as much strain on the back. So you see a lot of that. And hopefully that's something that he makes an adjustment for the longevity of his career. But it could be a Ricky Fowler situation where you just kind of have to re-architect the swing in a way that's going to not hurt your body, and just kind of listen to what your body's telling you and play that way. But yeah, that sucks. I mean, the thing that really sucks with Zalatoris is it's just crazy. He's never been on a Ryder Cup team because these injuries keep falling. Yeah. These injuries just keep falling like right around Ryder Cup season. He's had great years and he's been like more than deserving of being on Ryder Cup teams, but he's never been healthy enough. And now you wonder about that too, because I would just love to see him in that setting. And especially a year like this, like I was really pulling for him to have a good major season, because you'd love to put a guy like that on this team. And now we're not going to be able to do that.
Yep, not going to be able to do that this year. All right, let's do a little quick credit check segment. Segment brought to you by Budweiser, King of Beers. Segment that we do each and every week, that we give a little credit. We hand out a little flowers, a man that deserves a little bit of credit for the work that he's putting in under the radar. And I'll go first, John, if you don't mind. I'm going to say Bud Cauley for me.
Sure.
Had Bud Cauley on the card last week. Just almost got there, put one in the water on, I think, 13 on a relatively benign par 3 that everyone was kind of making easy par on. And if he didn't do that, he would have been a stroke off the lead of Griffin and kind of right in it and giving me a really good sweat. Just some of the stuff, and I'm going to just bring up quickly here, like sort of his player profile page, but just still sets up nicely for this next stretch of golf. I mean, you look how much better he plays on bent grass. You look at average strokes gained by scoring conditions right here, and he's a much better player on difficult scoring conditions. Average strokes gained by field strength, you kind of want him. He earned his way through the Aon Swing 5 into this field of the signature event. And it's just overall like really a solid run. A guy that was in major medical exemption. Like we thought his career was over not too long ago. Bud Colley T6 at the Players, 4th at Valspar, 5th at Valero, now 3rd at the Charles Schwab. He's kind of been a ball striking machine. I'm shocked at some of the distance numbers like Bud Colley's been putting up off the tee, but really kind of solid player across the board, putting it well right now. And a guy that hasn't gotten that win, may not get that win, but a guy that I think deserves a little credit check here tonight.
Yeah, that's a good one. And we talked on the show last week about like, what do we do with Bud Colley? Because we like the fit, and I think he's played well at that event before, but he's going through these like streaky moments. And he was really good last week. He really had a chance. It was not the most compelling drama, I think, that the Charles Schwab Challenge wanted, with a fight between Ben Griffin and Matty Schmid and a distant chasing pack. And Scotty never really got off to the jump he needed to have the casuals kind of tune in and see if this is going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to double down on, the obvious one, and Ben Griffin winning here. I didn't see too much else aside from Colley of like, okay, you really showed me something at the top of this leaderboard. Like, it was a pretty ugly leaderboard, to be honest.
Yeah, what?
And a lot of the
Colley
guys
was the story, I think. Like, had he been able to get it done off the injuries, a lot of people rooting for him. Like, I think that ratings wise and drama wise, that's who they really wanted to kind of be there, besides Scotty.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was just a lot of disappointing performances from the top guys. Like Scotty, it's a T4, but he was never really in it. Berger, I have no idea what happened with that. I thought that was a pretty safe one. Even Poston was a guy we talked about, just completely wilted on Sunday, and actually was in position to do something. And Tommy is just like the most predictable T4, never really in it finish. Like, why do I keep betting this guy? And like, even though it was a T4, like, I'm not very impressed by how he played. Like, he shot 8 under, and it was like all in the first 2 holes. He shot 8 under. So, that it was more like, okay, a lot of guys have really shown their true colors and disappointment to me, and I'm happy for Ben Griffin, because that's a tough course. And a hard fought 12 under win. That's unlike him. So kudos to Ben Griffin.
Shout out Ben Griffin. Shout out Bud Colley. That's our credit check. Now let's move on to this week, John. Muirfield Village, obviously one of the more demanding and challenging tracks that we see on the PGA Tour schedule, has been through a good bit of change. There's a pretty wide spectrum in terms of winning score based on, like, even if you go the 1 year they played back-to-back weeks, they were drastically different. So I think you're our resident course guy. Like, what are some notes that you have on the course, and what are your expectations of how it's going to likely play in 2025?
Yes. One of my favorite courses to watch of the year, and really have enjoyed them pushing this off of the actual Memorial Day weekend, which I think that was starting last year. They pushed it off because I actually hadn't been able to watch as much golf as I would like to. And you're like 3-day weekend traveling and doing everything else. You're like, there's always plans. Not so much, the last year was actually the week I moved into my house. This tournament was on. It was on all 4 days. I watched every single shot. I was sweating Colin. He got chased down by the boogeyman, and Scotty himself in a 2-man race. I still remember so much about this tournament, but it's a Jack Nicklaus, his baby. It's made, I think, in the image of Augusta National in a lot of ways, although it just adds that penal rough that's not at all a factor at Augusta. So that makes the biggest difference here. But it is a glorified second shot course where, like, driving accuracy, total driving, it doesn't really give you a huge leg up if you don't have a ton of distance, like you alluded to with the Rory comments. A lot of these par 5s are 3-shot holes anyway, so you're not really losing by distance. And the par 5s are the only holes that average under par. So that's what I love. I just love a PGA Tour venue that you have to actually, like, earn the par. So last year it was 8 under was your winners. Horschel, I think, got it to like 12 or 13 under. That's the lowest under par it's been for a while. So it's a grind, which I love. You have to take advantage of the par fives, but not in the traditional way of just like drive it up there, pin high in 2. You have to really wedge it and be strategic about what number you want to leave yourself. The course underwent a very extensive renovation project, not even restoration, just it needed to be renovated. They were kind of losing the greens. It was baked out, super firm. So I think that was in 2021. They just ripped everything up. And the first couple of years, it was like crazy firm, like it hadn't settled back in. And now I think it's like finally at the point where they want it to play. So in short, it's not a second shot course, but it's really a course where you're going to separate yourself on approach. And these greens are not small, but still very hard to hold, I think, because of the way that they put the pins. A lot of players like Patrick Cantlay, who plays well here every year, has talked about like you just need to know your landing areas and you're not really firing at pins. You're like firing at quadrants and trying to use the greens to funnel down. So course history, I think, is pretty important here. You need to be a course strategist and you need to be patient. You have to be able to scramble. So I'm still looking for iron play as I always am. And then I think a little bit more of an emphasis on short game than most weeks.
I think short game too. I think it's so important just from a scrambling perspective and like knowing that you're going to have to avoid bogeys when you do miss greens because the greens and regulation rate is so low. Just because it's one of the most harshest penalties for missing a fairway on the PGA Tour. I think obviously distance is beneficial anywhere you go. But I think here, of all the places, hitting the fairways and being able to hit those approach shots from the short grass is extremely important. It's really, in often cases, on many of the longer holes, the only chance you have at holding the green, if you want to land it on the green, is coming from the short grass. I think course history is always typically noteworthy here. I'm going to bring up now your stat model this week from over at BetSperts. Promo code, if you are not using BetSperts Golf right now, is LINES, LINES, 25% off any sub over there. It is awesome to try if you have not yet. Not only can you make the most customizable models in the industry, you can look at our models. And this week, we're going to look at John Hazelbauer's, who's got Scotty Scheffler, number 1, Morikawa, Connors, Fleetwood, Lowry, rounding out the top 5, Keegan Bradley, Sepp Straka, Xander, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth coming in at 10 in the model. John, I see you got a lot of different stats here. Talk me through like the 2 most important ones, like to you this week. If anyone out there wants to build their own, what are those 2 sort of data categories that you really want to focus on if you want to have some success at Muirfield Village?
Yeah, I love doing a little peek behind the curtain here. One of the best things about BetSperts is exactly that. You can just look at what we did, and then you can tune into preferred lines and hear why. My model tends to be like a little like longer than it needs to be because I kind of keep these evergreen, like I keep every strokes gain stat in there, and you'll see a lot of like 0% in here. So every single week I keep the like strokes gain total over the last 36 and off the tee approach around the green, and then I'll upweight them week to week just so I don't have to keep repulling it. And I love that you can do that in BetSperts. It's one of my favorite things about it. But the things that I think are most important here, I put a lot of weight on the comp course history. So that's where we are here. That's where I put my most weight. Talked about just like so many major venues emulate what you need to do here. Not quite. I think the biggest difference is the importance of distance. Like if you look at Quail Hollow and Valhalla, which are pretty similar, and Valhalla is a great comp. It's another Jack Nicklaus design. There, it was like step 1 is you have to be long, and step 2 is you do all these other things. Here, it's step 1 is be trending on approach, have some good course history, and then show me that you're able to scramble on more demanding conditions. And when I put all those in, and I see that spits out here, Scheffler, Colin, Connors, Tommy, like those are all guys who play well here, play well in majors. That checks out to me. It is a great field, so you're going to see a lot of good names pop to the top. But yeah, no surprises here when I ran this. I guess I I like Xander quite a bit this week. I thought he might be a little bit higher, but I know he's been a little bit slower out the gate, so I'm not too shocked to see that too. And he's had great history at this course as well.
One of the things that I kind of noticed that I thought was interesting about the model that you have is a couple of things. So you just look at the profile and the skill set of a lot of these players: Morikawa, Connors, Fleetwood, Lowry, Bradley, Straka. Right, like Scotty's going to be number one no matter what you do, right? But the next 6 guys, none of them are bombers at all. They're all very accurate players, but when you look at this category that you weighted pretty highly, which was par 5 scoring average, which you mentioned that's where you have to do your scoring. If you can play the whole course, 1 over par, but birdie all the par 5s, like, you might win the Memorial. And the crazy thing is a lot of these guys, when you look at Straka, Siwoo Kim, Colin Morikawa, Andrew Novak, like, these are not longer hitters. So I think it's important. A lot of times when we think of par 5 scoring, we think that there's such an advantage to being a longer hitter. When one, we already discussed that some of the bombers have been critical of that aspect of Muirfield Village in general. It's one of the things that Rory said is there's just too much risk in going for it in 2, which what that does essentially, if all the players are mostly willing to do it, is it turns it into 120 to 100 yard wedge shot, right? And who are the best players from 120 to 100 yards? It's Straka, it's Morikawa, it's Fleetwood, it's Lowry, it's these guys, which makes a ton of sense. And I thought was one of the more interesting elements when you look at par 5 scoring average. Like, Colin Morikawa is 6th, but he's 54th in distance. Sepp Straka is 2nd, but he's 60th in distance. And this is in a very shortened field. So I think that's important to denote the difference between the two in general, but also I think is even further emphasized at Muirfield Village just because of the way the course kind of lays out. Now, there will be opportunities if you can get there, but just the way that the fairways kind of tighten and the amount of risk that you have to take on in many of those circumstances, I think allows some of these shorter hitters to really actually hit the gas on some of the par 5s, which is helpful to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all things being equal, if this was just an event where you could only score on your on the par 5s and you're just hanging on for dear life on every other hole, then the par 5 scoring would be weighted a lot higher than 7% in this model. But it's the fact that it's so unique how you score on these par 5s, that the way that Matty Schmid is scoring on par 5s, that probably the Puerto Rico Open and a few other things teased in there. That's why he's in the top 5. I might disregard that a little bit because there you can just be pin high and scramble, whereas this is not really a course where you're going to scramble for a birdie on a par 5, which is absolutely the case if you go to like a Kapalua and you want to look at par 5 scoring, which is very crucial. I'm looking at scrambling there because everybody's pin high or on the green or just off and needs to scramble for birdies, or even on like drivable par 4s too. Scrambling becomes more important, but not as much in that regard is the case for Muirfield Village.
Let's take a look at the board, find some guys we like this week for the Muirfield Village Memorial Tournament, Jack's Place. Bringing up the current odds as of now, Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, here the Preferred Lines podcast. Scotty Scheffler, your defending champion, is 3-1 to repeat and win the Memorial. I believe first, third. So I think you told me, let's start with Scotty, because I think you told me last week that you've been saving Scotty all year in terms of a one and done action for Memorial. This was the spot you always wanted to play him. Does that mean you want to bet him?
Yes, this is the spot I've been saving him all year and one and done. And no, I'm not going to bet him. And I also am done with the without Scotty Scheffler market after a try. Well, this week I am. The reason I went to the without Scotty Scheffler market last week is because everybody who was chasing him was relatively unproven, and there were very few options that I actually trusted toe to toe down the line could chase him down. This week, there's good names that we've seen them beat Scheffler in tournaments plenty of times over the last couple of years. So I'm not as afraid, but obviously he's a perfect fit for this course. Somebody that I've been saving him one and done. Like at this point, if you haven't used Scotty, I almost think you have to use him here. I mean, I guess you could use him at one of the next two majors. But there's just as much, if not more, of a purse, I believe, this week for a signature event as there would be for a major. And I think that gets a little bit overlooked. Like, people have either already used Scotty or they're going to use him in the majors. I don't think a lot of people are going to use him coming off of a quote unquote disappointing T4 at Colonial. So maybe it's at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a hedge. Like, I'm going to put my outrights in. I'm going to hope that Scotty doesn't win. If he does chase them all down, then I've gotten a nice leg up and one and done.
Okay, so right behind him, this is kind of interesting because they lumped a lot of guys here together. Morikawa 16-1, Xander 16-1, JT 18-1, Patrick Cantlay 20. Let's stop there, just between those four. Have you bet any one? And if not, which one of those guys do you think has the best probability of having a good week?
Yeah, I like Xander. I wrote a bit about Xander this week. I think I'm higher than most on Xander, either this week or just in general right now. I think most people are kind of waiting to see him mix post-injury before they're back in on Xander. And we're not really used to seeing a good number on Xander before he went on his tear of winning streaks last year. It was already priced in as this guy who's not closing, and he's like the second guy on the board anyway. Here, I was able to get an 18 on him. I think that's a great number, slightly better. I think he should be the second favorite. I could hear an argument for Colin being in his own kind of tier with how well he's played at this event, where he was in the mix last year, just having a great season. But it's just like the eye test for me, watching the last couple weeks of Xander in feature groups at Augusta, at the PGA Championship. He looks totally healthy and maybe just slightly rusty. But I don't think this rib injury that kept him out of TGL and he played the Century and then nothing else between the fall and March. There's some rust there, but the thing that looked like was the last piece to come back to me was the putting for Xander. And I was surprised to see that he's been positive the last few weeks putting. So that was the only thing that didn't look like comfortable to me, but it's working for him anyway. He just keeps top 10ing and top 15ing at this event, even though, again, he's not really mixing here. So I think this is a great course fit for Xander. And I think we could potentially catch a nice value here early, getting on him a little bit before he starts to show that he's back to last season self.
Long, difficult, gnarly, rough, challenging golf course. You can pretty much pencil Xander Schauffele in for a top 15 wherever you have that set up, anywhere in the world. He's great. Like you mentioned, some of the putting has been coming back. I noticed he had a great week off the tee as well at Quail Hollow, I think plus 3.5, which was one of his bigger weeks of the year off the tee. It was interesting because he never seemed to really lose distance, but lost a little bit of accuracy, and I'm not sure where those strokes fell. Quail Hollow was kind of a weird one where there was a couple holes where you could really gain a ton, like the drivable par 4. But I think he just had a really solid week off the tee and continued to grind. Does feel close to me. Justin Thomas, I'll say I love his upside, still leading the PGA Tour in birdies per round this year. There seems to be a baseline level of consistency, but he still is having these ups and downs and these uncharacteristic rounds where like he'll just shoot 76 and you're like, that should have been a 72. Like, you should have got around an even par and like saved your 65, but instead you were 4 or 5 over. So that's a little bit troublesome to me. I get the love for Mr. Course History, Patrick Cantlay, albeit I think that he is the furthest of these 4 guys from being back to what we would expect. Therefore, at a similar price, I'm not willing to take it. So I'm dipping in without Scotty. I took Colin Morikawa at 14-1. That number is still available now at DraftKings without Scotty Scheffler. He's 14-1 on some books with Scotty Scheffler. If he's not, he's seeing roughly a 10% discount, but the odds board's telling you that Scheffler has a 33% chance to win this thing. So you remove him off and you drop Colin down a couple of numbers. I think that was one of the more favorable ones that I saw that DraftKings had in comparison to his regular price, going from 16 to 14. Just like playing so solid, but hasn't quite got it all and put it all together. Another week with Joe Griner. I think this is one of those events where, as shown in some of his course history, that it's a long, challenging golf course, but he's the anomaly, and especially here. Because he hits it so accurately and so straight, and he's such a good long iron player that it actually is a great course setup for someone like Colin Morikawa. He's got 2 seconds. Did he win the workday, or did he lose that to Justin Thomas in a playoff when they had the workday here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he won that. Yeah, because Colin won like every workday event that's ever been
So he
sponsored.
won that event. I don't know if that totally counts, but it's something. And he
Yeah.
has two solo seconds here, including last year. And there was another year a few years ago where he was like a couple strokes back and withdrew on the final round, like woke up with a back
That's right.
injury. And I know like people were crushing him because they thought he could really make a run, and people were live betting him. He looked like a great option, a few strokes behind, and then withdrew Sunday morning. So yeah, I think it's a great course fit for him. I'm still net positive on the caddy change for Colin Morikawa, and so I took 14-1 in the without chef market.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's 2 points going from 16 consensus to 14. It's probably, that's not a big difference. So, maybe I will be a little bit patient and see where these odds net out. Maybe I'll come back and dip in those waters. Because
If he wins this week, you're gonna think about it for Oakmont.
I am, because like Scheffler's my one and done pick, and I'm using that as a hedge, but I could also just not hedge and have the best of both worlds and have my outright win, and he wins, and we all win we'll see.
Moving down the board a little bit, Ludwig Oberg, 25-1 is the best price. A lot of 22s out there, but a few 25s. Fleetwood's 28-1. Victor Hovland, 30-1. Corey Connors, 33-1. Hideki, 35. Spieth, 40. Shane Lowry, 40. Danny Berger, 40-1. What do you like kind of in this range if you're passing on the guys up top?
Yeah, there's a lot I don't like in this range. Like, Ludwig needs to be longer than this. He just hasn't had it for a long time now. So I don't see a lot of people betting that. Maybe a contrarian DFS play, but I don't see a lot of people going there. Tommy, maybe he'll top 5 again. I don't believe it anymore that he has it within him to beat a signature event field. So I'm gonna pass there. Victor, I understand 30 is a bit short for me. I know Victor Hovland, the name deserves to be in the 20s. Been a bit hit or miss. I don't know if I see him winning this event twice in 3 years. It should be important that you have a good short game here. Victor bucks that trend everywhere anyway. Like, he just plays really well in difficult conditions. He's not the type of player that I want here. Connors would make so much sense for him to play well this week, but not as an outright for me. And then that leads me to Hideki, who I will be betting this week. Okay. Again, like, maybe you could say the driver hasn't been his best this year, but we know what he can do with the mid irons. Maybe the best short game, or around the green. I shouldn't say total short game, because putting is what it is. But if it's a scrambling contest and a single digits under par, and we're talking about how you need to score on these par 5s, which is more like flip a wedge in there. I love Hideki. This is where he won in his debut in 2014, and he's been playing well. I think he's been flying under the radar just a tiny bit. Hideki usually tends to do that. Like, he just kind of gets his top 20s and he starts to trend, and people still don't talk about it. Yeah, he's the forgotten elite, really. So I really like Hideki. He would be my favorite in this range for sure.
I'm probably gonna buck you here a little bit. You're gonna have to call me out on it, but I think look, you got close with Tommy last week. This is what happens every time you get close. You say never again. I'm betting him. I bet him 28-1. I feel like he's. You could say you can run this tape for the last 4 years, but I really feel like he's genuinely as close as he's ever been. Look at just from a pure number standpoint, this is as solid as he's ever been tee to green on the PGA Tour. The second best around the green guy in the field over the last 30 rounds. His chipping and scrambling and avoiding bogey ability has been far superior that he's produced in any other season on the PGA Tour. It's gaining putting, 4th, 7th, I think, his last 3 starts. And it's like, okay, he's the like the 10th ranked player in the world, right? Roughly. I don't have it in front of me, but we have these built-in like biases about Tommy that like he's going to drop us these breadcrumbs and these list of ingredients, and we just kind of ignore them in many cases because we don't think he can win. But I do, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like this is a place that we got to see a lot of guys break through at that we're not expecting it from guys in their 160th start. But I think I saw the tweet that like the amount of top fives he's putting together, just knock at the door. Just keep knocking at the door, Tommy. And like eventually it feels like it has to happen. Here's one thing that I found interesting, John. I don't know. So I run the market movers piece, which I kind of like do a deep dive on some of the head-to-head matchups. And I think what that helps me do week to week is it helps me utilize the line movement in there. Because the one thing I know from talking to very sharp people in the industry who bet a ton, and the people who bet the most on golf that I know, is they attack the head-to-head markets because they have the highest limits. They're able to get the most money down. They feel like that's where their biggest edge is against a sports book, and they're probably right versus betting an outright market. They paired Scheffler this week against Tommy Fleetwood in a head-to-head matchup. Now, he's a big favorite. I think he's minus 325. But it was interesting to me and noteworthy that, like, why not? And this is like the books that post him first, which are the sharpest offshore books that have the highest action. They didn't put him with Cantlay, Thomas, Xander, Morikawa. They put him with Fleetwood. And it always, like, makes me think about something a little bit. Like, why would they match him with Fleetwood? Are they scared of Fleetwood? And they probably are scared of Fleetwood in a matchup market. Like he probably has been crushing them all year in the head-to-head matchups because his floor is like 9th place. I don't know. I just made up a lot of reasons and tried to talk myself into it. All of it still comes back to the fact that can he win? Is he going to bust onto the scene and win a signature event? I think the answer is yes. Can he? Will he? I'm still very reluctant, but I felt like it was the best number comparatively where I looked at where he rated in my model, your model, and others, and a decent course fit here.
Yeah. I mean, last week they were both sitting next to each other, T4, Scotty and Tommy, -8 apiece. So there was no blood on that matchup bet last week, and they're probably just running it back off of that. It just seems to me with Tommy, and I keep going back to him. Like I think he wins on the DP World Tour. Like he's capable of winning. It's going to come inevitably.
Yeah.
But what always seems to happen when I'm sweating Tommy in contention, and it happened again last week, is you come up to the par 5 that you have to get a birdie on, and you're coming home, and there are not many birdie opportunities coming, and you're chasing, and you got to have this, and he bogeys it. He did it here. He did it at the Valspar. He did it in France at the Olympics. Every time I've bet him and he's been in the mix, when he needs a birdie on his last opportunity on the back nine, he hasn't taken advantage. And as soon as he turns that corner, that's the difference, because he went into a par 5. I think it was the 11th or 12th hole last week on Sunday. He was 3 back. If he gets a birdie, he would have been 1 off what was ultimately the winning score. And he bogeyed it, one of the easier holes on the course. So I don't know if that's between the ears or what, but it's right there in front of him. And he has all the game in the world. And it would make so much sense. He's such a good fit here and so many other places. I will probably hop back on again soon. Yeah. I've been saying all year that I love him at the Canadian Open next week. I don't know if he'll play because he's been playing so much, but he
that one at Jeff's course killed me, dude.
Yes.
Killed me. That was one of the ones where I'm like, I never bet Tommy again. I'm not going to bet him for 6 months. You lay up there. Are you kidding me?
Yet another par 5 he did not birdie.
Yes, yet another par 5 that he had like 220 in that he laid up on. Outrageous. But another guy I wanted to mention here, and I've got a problem. And I've got an addiction, and it's betting Daniel Berger, but I can't stop this, John. He's 40-1. I took it again. I'm going to bring onto the stage here like Daniel Berger's stat profile for those of you who think I'm just insane. Look at all that green. This guy's playing incredible golf. Like the ball striking numbers, the tee to green, the amount of consecutive events, tee to green. Like I'm still scrolling, looking for an event where he lost strokes tee to green. Guy's unbelievable. Missed the cut last week. I don't know. Is it a bad? I'm not going to kill him for it. He lost 2.2 putting. He gained almost 3 strokes off the tee in 2 rounds. Was gained on approach, gained around the green, got crushed putting. I think he has decent Memorial history. Okay, so T5 in 2022, which was the last time that he got into his event, has gained strokes putting 3 consecutive times at the Memorial. But a T5 before he left off for his injury hiatus. I think Daniel Berger is like a fringe top 12 player in the world right now based on his level of consistency, and he's going to win a big boy one. And this is just the profile, of course, that I feel like from tee to green that he can really dominate on. And it's just the ball striking is something I can't continue to ignore. And I feel like the putter, for someone who historically is a pretty good putter, is going to turn at some point. And maybe it's at a course like Muirfield with different types of greens, super fast, super undulated. It just kind of puts you in a different headspace from a putting perspective, particularly when you talk about challenging conditions. I mean, the guy finished 3rd at the Heritage while losing strokes putting. Like, if he gains strokes putting there, he probably wins. Yeah. So we need that flip for Berger. And I've been here so many times this season that I can't let it happen without being a part of it. I won't be able to host the show the next week. So.
You're in too deep. No, it makes sense. And you're getting a pretty good discount now because of the miscut. He's looked human for the first time in a very long time. You give him a pass, give him a couple extra days of prep. Usually that goes a long way. I like when a guy's showing form and has 1 missed cut, because then they know what to work on, and they have a couple extra days to do it.
Danny Berg, get the flat stick figured out. Moving up the board a little bit, Siwoo Kim, Sepp Straka, Denny McCarthy in the 45 to 50 to 1 range. Tony Finau 50 to 1. Sam Burns, who's shown some life, 50 to 1. Fitzpatrick, who showed some life, 50 to 1, and has great course history here as well. Matty Fitz. Sungjae Im, Keegan Bradley, Aaron Rye, Russell Henley, JJ Spawn, Harris English. This is sort of that range from 50 to 70. Your champion last week, Ben Griffin at 66, Mav McNeely, Bobby Mack, JT Poston, all the guys under 75 to 1 this week. John, was there anyone there that I mentioned their name that you have a little bit of interest in?
I think Siwoo could be the most tipped community bet of the week, especially at 45. I don't think you'll see that 45 stay for long. I think he ends up in the 35 to 40 range. Amazing course history, ideal course fit as somebody who separates with the irons in the short game. Doesn't really have the distance, and is a good example of a player where that doesn't matter. At Muirfield Village, you're going to pull up, I'm sure, the course history here. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's all top 20s the last 5 years. So, and he was great at the PGA. I believe he was contending, right? And he was playing well last week too. So, just really good form, good course history. The fit makes sense. Someone who just like kind of shows up and wins once a year, right? That's how I would describe Siwoo. Like, he's just kind of good for one, and then he'll huddle away, and you won't hear from him for a little bit. But I think this could be the moment for him. And a bit shorter on the board, I also bet Shane Lowry. Like I just talked to you about Tommy Fleetwood not being able to win, and here I am betting Shane Lowry, who continues to get in his own way. A sucker for the Dublin narrative for the Irishman.
There you go.
I tend to always bet Shane Lowry at this event. Again, like he at least has a very elite skill of short game that I keep going back to, and I think that's going to be very crucial to coming down the stretch, having to find pars in difficult conditions. And he's been absolutely striping it, both off the tee and on approach. So it's just same thing as Fleetwood. Like, on paper they should be winning, and they just haven't yet. And I decided to go with Lowry in a tough 1v1 with Fleetwood this week.
I don't mind Shane Lowry. Like I said, I'm betting Tommy Fleetwood. So what am I going to say? I don't really have anyone yet in this range. So I mentioned I have Morikawa without Scheffler at 14 to 1, Fleetwood 28, Berger at 40. I have room to play around here. I have one other guy I'll talk to you about in a moment, but I want to bring up this stat profile. A guy who you look at scoring conditions wise is much better. Field strength wise, improves off his baseline. Length, of course, improves off his baseline. Long iron play, pretty solid. Let's talk about Denny Dirt, because this dude is playing some golf right now. Here's one of the things I saw in a matchup I actually already took. It was Denny McCarthy versus Matt Fitzpatrick, full tournament head to head. McCarthy minus 120. Already dropped a hammer on that bad boy this morning, but coming off a T8 at the PGA Championship, just like a solid run, and he's doing it in a lot of different ways. Of course, he relies on the putter. Broke my heart here a few years ago when he finished solo second and lost in that playoff to Victor Hovland despite gaining like 8 strokes putting. But a T5 the year before that. Guy who always plays well in the Midwest, familiar with bent grass conditions, really loves this course, told me himself that it's one of his favorite stops on tour, really likes Jack Nicklaus golf courses. And it's just, I think just looking at, I don't know if I'll bet him at 50-1, then that price feels a little short, but Matt Fitzpatrick had one good week. Denny McCarthy has been much more solid long-term. They both have good course history here. I think McCarthy's the play for me, at least in that matchup. So couldn't let this go without shouting out Denny here. Andrew Novak feels like he's getting a little like overlooked at 80-1 here. I mean, we saw what Ben Griffin did. I think Novak's better than Ben Griffin.
Yeah, I would agree.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So Griffin's now off a win. Where was Griffin? 55? Yeah, Griffin's 66. Novak's 80. Novak's a better player. He's proven it all season long. He can do it on a more diverse set of courses. Pendrith at 90-1. Fowler off a decent week. Minwoo Lee. Akshay Bhatia, I think, lingered for a while last week. Wyndham Clark. There's a lot of names here in this range. The one that I'm going back to, and it's just in a top 20 market, is Bud Cauley. I'm going back to Bud Cauley. It's been so legit. I showed earlier in the show the run that he's on with like 4 of his last 6 starts inside the top 6 or something like that. Bud Cauley's plus 280 inside the top 20 market this week in like a little positional space. That's what I'm going to there. Any long shots or any guys down here further in the board, John, you want to shout out before we get out of here?
I want to ask you, because I'm going to bet one of these guys. I'm leaning one way, and they're both 100-1. And yeah, I was going to fill out a card, and I was like, you know what? I'm going on preferred lines. Let's talk it out, because I don't want to make this decision in a vacuum. It's either going to be Akshay or Ricky for me. And with Akshay, I'm leaning that way because he has shown that he can be elite with the irons, which is the most important skill set of anything. Right. And with Ricky, it's more of a course history play where he has the experience and he's been here a lot and he always plays well. And he just flashed a tiny bit last week. They both finished around somewhere in the top 20 and looked to be like in better sorts than they were a few weeks ago. But Ricky has been a little bit more with the putter. But again, it's more that course history where I'm like, okay, 100-1 for Ricky. And looking at the names around him, like that feels like a more reliable name. Or Akshay, who I have not bet since his disappointing Players Sunday, but somebody who obviously in a signature event has mixed and, is a proven winner and as recent as last year.
Bhatia, I say Bhatia. Better player than Ricky, higher upside, better iron player. I think he's more creative around the green. You mentioned some of the stuff with Ricky. Ricky does have good course history. I know Ricky, it was weird. Like he used to, when he was like bad, I remember he would like try to US Open qualify here, I believe.
Really?
Yeah. So I think he just really likes the course, but I think it's Bhatia for me. I mean, there's of course a floor level with Bhatia, not that Fowler doesn't have it of a miscut, but if you're going to take an outright pick to win, I think he'd be my guy.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning to. So it's usually a tight card in these signature events. It's one of the things I don't love about this is it's not as fun of a week to put a card together because you're pretty hamstrung with the odds. But anytime you can get 100-1 odds in a signature event, you're going to get good players who have a chance. So I want to always have at least exposure to one long shot in these siggies. So I'll roll the dice with Akshay.
All right, recap your card for me. Bhatia at 100-1. Who else you got on there?
We've got Xander at 18.
Yeah, Xander, that was one I
We've
missed.
got Hideki at 35, Shane at 40, Siwoo at 45, and Akshay to round it out at 100.
Okay, outright card for me. 125 to 1, Bod Coley, Daniel Berger, 40 to 1, Tommy Fleetwood, 28 to 1. And a diverse card for your boy this week. Without Scheffler, we're dipping into positional markets. Without Scheffler, 14 to 1 on Colin Morikawa. I gave you plus 280 on a top 20 for Collie Buds. And we're going some matchups. Denny Dirt minus 120 over Matty Fitz this week. Lock that in, pound it. Those are your preferred lines for the 2025 Memorial Tournament. John, absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me once again this week. Fired up for Canada. Then we get Oakmont. Then we get Travelers. We continue this run. It's been awesome to have you with us here, dude. Best of luck this week. Any closing words for you, my man?
No, let's get a winner this week so we can clip something and tell the world how much of a genius you and I are together.
Experts, baby. That's why you guys are here. Thanks again
go
for
for
checking out the
Memorial.
show. Like, subscribe, support the show as always. If you want one of the preferred lines tees, that is also one of the best ways that you can show support, show us some love. That link is in the description on the YouTube channel. Like I mentioned, promo code lines over at Rotoballer, promo code lines over at BetSperts. Thank you guys so much. Best of luck. Enjoy the Memorial. If you happen to be 3 hours away, don't be afraid to take that Intrepid right down the turnpike. Fire at 85. If there's a house party, they are kind and friendly, nice people in Dublin, Ohio. Stop in and say hello. Grab yourself a cold one. On behalf of John Hazelbauer, I'm Joe Idoni. Best of luck this week. Thanks for checking out the show. Peace.